Hello and welcome back to part 2 of my NFL model tutorial. My name is Jason. As I said before, I am J187 in the premium Discord chat. And in part 1 of this video series, we walked through making the NFL model that you have in front of you here. We worked on this main sheet, this dashboard page, and we uploaded a data source and organized our data here in a meaningful way, and we generated some projections, exposures, and randomness to put into Fantasy Cruncher. Where I stopped was when we started to get into the sorter part of this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the time here to give this tab a color and give this tab a different color. Again, any color, doesn't really matter. We're going to start building out the sorter here, okay? I'm going to be building this primarily for DraftKings, but you can certainly do this for FanDuel as well. With respect to sorting, the site will definitely matter. With respect to this, pretty much all of the differences between FanDuel and DraftKings are going to be represented here in the projections and ownership and stuff like that. So this is universal. With respect to this, it's going to generate a format that you're going to want to be putting into either DraftKings or FanDuel as your lineup. So, you're going to need it to be specific. Like I said, we're going to build it out for DraftKings, but I will show you kind of as we go how you can also accommodate FanDuel. In my own particular model, this is a one-stop shop where I can change it from DraftKings to FanDuel. It's a little bit more complicated that way. And if you're just starting out, I would definitely recommend building like DK sorter and then another tab for FanDuel sorter and doing it separately. Okay, so first thing we're going to do here is we're going to stick to the same convention as my sorter. And in this upper first cell, we're going to say DK because that just signifies that this is the DraftKings version of my sorter. And for you guys, it's just going to kind of be an anchor spot for us to give our rows and columns. First row is going to be 0. And then from there, I like to use this equals A2 plus 1 convention here. And I just take this down as many rows as I anticipate having lineups. So in this case, let's take it down to 2002. We'll just say, all right, we can accommodate 2000 lineups in this particular sorter. You could do more, you could do less, whatever you want to do. In this case, we're going to take our formulas down to 202, and this will count from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3. This doesn't serve very much purpose other than just to kind of keep, like, first of all, it keeps things organized, and second of all, it will help me in my sorter to identify when there's data here or not. But just to keep everything the same, I'm gonna keep this here for you guys as well. Next to your 0, we're going to start our main headings, okay? And our main headings are going to be the positions as you would see them in a crunch. So it's going to be quarterback, running back, wide receiver. I meant to capitalize that. And then wide receiver. Wait, what did I do wrong? Oh, I didn't do 2 running backs. Whoops. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and then tight end, and then a flex, and then defense and special teams. All right. So then this is going to be the end of our crunch right here. This right here, I'm going to use as a separation between this part and everything else. So I'm just going to kind of shoot down to 2000. Right here. See, this also helps me visually too quickly just when I'm building, and it serves some purposes, not a lot. All right, there we go. Now, here, we are going to start giving ourselves that paste location that I talked about in the first video. So conditional formatting, highlight cell rules, more rules, no errors, format it yellow, and I'll give myself the dots. And again, this is preference, whatever you want to do. But I do recommend doing something here, in particular in this sort of part, because there are formulas all around you, and this little window is where you're going to be copying and pasting and deleting, and you want to make sure you don't go outside of that. So I do recommend doing this, okay? From here, let's start giving ourselves some color so this thing starts to take shape. Since this is DraftKings, I'll put in a nice, lovely orange. All right, there we go. So we've got our little window here. This is where our crunch is going to go. All right, so let's go ahead now and grab a crunch for this sorter. Let me bring back, not that, but that. Let me bring back Fantasy Cruncher, and let's just crunch out 100 quick lineups. This shouldn't take very long. Okay, so now when you're done with your crunch, okay, you're going to come up here to export like you normally would. Choose the proper slate. That's important, okay? Make sure you choose, I don't know why I'm getting a Fantasy Cruncher error here, that's weird. Choose the right slate. Open this up. And when it opens, you want to take everything under the headings. So put your focus here in the first cell underneath, Control Shift right and then down. And that will basically allow you to capture everything with Control C. Minimize that. Get rid of this, come back here, and we'll paste that right here. Boom. Okay. Now, our crunch is in this window. And again, it just goes in this area right here with that yellow is. No headings, just our crunch. And now what you'll notice is we have our players in here, but we can't pull any data from our main tab or our player list or anything because the names are in this format from DK with their player IDs. And that's not going to match up if we tried to search it against this, okay? So Derrick Henry does not match up to, Derrick Henry 21519. So we need to strip that away. For that, there are formulas that we can use, and the formulas will basically stay the same no matter what. And that's the good news. So the formulas are different, though, for DraftKings and FanDuel, because with FanDuel, they use a different convention here, right? It's like a colon and something else, or I think the code is even in the front. We'll have to take a look at that. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create a duplicate of this exact space here. Quarterback, running back, defense, special teams, this whole thing, okay? Right here, okay? Because basically we're going to duplicate everything here, but just without the codes. And then from here, this is going to be used to query all the names for our data. So I'm going to show you this formula in a couple of different steps so that you understand, okay? So the first formula we're going to use is the left formula because the name is to the left of what we really want, right? We don't want this code. If we wanted just a code, we would use the right formula, right? We'd take everything to the right. But we want the left formula because we want to start at the left and we want JALEN, all this stuff in the left. So if we just come in here and start typing left, you'll see that Excel prompts you for the parameters of the formula. So it's saying left of what text? Well, of this text, which is B3. So left of B3. And now, before I actually do this, I do want to go back here and say, let's go back and say if B3 equals blank, blank. And you'll remember that from video number 1, where we don't want to be performing this action if we've run out of lineups, okay? So now back here, we're going to say left of B3. Now, the only other thing we need to provide this formula is how many characters. If I say left of B3, 3, it's going to return JAL, 3 characters from the left. So we could count 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I lost count. It's either 11 or 12. So let's just say 11, right? And we're going to say, let's take, if B3 is blank, it's blank. If not, let's take the left 11 characters and let's see what that returns, okay? And it gives us Jalen Hurts, okay? So let's try 10. What if we only took 10? Oh, Jalen Hurt. So now we know that it is 11. Because if you do 12, it's also going to give you Jalen Hurts. But what you don't know is that it's also giving you this space, right? And you don't want that. So you want to do the minimum number here. that's going to return the full name without cutting any letters off. So that's great. But the problem is, if we go down to Matthew Stafford, that's going to give us Matthew Stuff, because there are more than 11 characters in Matthew Stafford's name. So now we need something universal that's going to allow us to do this for every single player and have it be the same result all the time, which is basically just the letters that comprise the player's name. Well, what do we notice about every single one of these? Every single one of these names has the same player ID format, where it has a parenthesis, the number, a parenthesis. So we can actually determine where in this string that parenthesis is for everyone, and it will be different for everybody. We can determine that with another formula, and I'm going to borrow this cell right next door just for a minute, just to show you this. This function is called the find function. So now it's asking us, find what text? Well, and if you're finding something specific, you want to put it in quotation marks. So we're going to find this parenthesis, that parenthesis, facing that way. We want to find it. We want to find it within B3, right? Wherever it is in this cell, find it. And then we hit another comma, and it prompts us, where are we starting? Start at number 1. Because if we start at like number 10 down here, or like, let's say if we start at 15, it's going to start here and it's going to miss it. So just always start at number 1. Also, the reason you start at number 1 is what it's going to return is it's going to return the number of characters from the starting point until we reach this character that we're looking for. So if we start at 1, it's going to literally count how many characters are here before this parenthesis. And so there we go. And let's see. And it's 13. Now, I told you that 11 is the accurate number here for Jalen Hurts. Why is it 13? Well, because it's including not only this space, but also the parenthesis itself, because we had to find it. So if we know that for every name, we want basically all the characters except for the space in the parenthesis, we know that there's 2 less, we can do find that parenthesis and -2. And then it's 11. And that's the same 11. So now what we can do is we could take this formula. You don't want the equal sign, just the actual formula part. Copy it, come in here, and instead of 11, let's replace 11 with the formula, which we know will equal 11. But the key is this formula will equal 11 because that's where it is here. It's going to be a different number here and a different number here. So this basically now says, take the left of B3. How many numbers? I don't know. Figure it out by finding this parenthesis and telling me how many characters it is until we get to it, and then walk back 2. And in this case, it's going to be 11. And we say okay to this, and we've got Jalen Hurts. And now when we take this and copy it down, we have Matthew Stafford. Okay? So it's going to be accurate for everybody. We're going to delete this out of here, and we are going to, by the way, we cannot use our click trick here because there's nothing adjacent to us, right? Here or here, we can't do that. So we have to basically just take this, copy it, and page down with shift or however you want to do this to get down to 2000. And we have to do this manually. From this point on, we can do the click trick because there's always going to be data next to us. Okay, boom. So when I copy this over here, everything is going to stay the same, except all of the cell references are going to adjust. Now, I don't want the B to adjust here because I'm just using this as a guide to say, hey, if there are no more lineups, I'm just going to stick with the front. So in that case, I'm going to anchor just the B with a $sign. If I anchored it with the B $3, that would anchor the 3 2 as well. And you don't want to do that because that's going to always read what's in row 3. I'm anchoring just the B so that when I copy down, it says always look in B for whatever row you're in, okay? So I'm going to anchor that, but I'm not going to anchor these because I want, when I copy this, I want this to change to C so that it looks in C and gives me the next player over under running back, which is Mike Davis. Make sense? So I'm going to just adjust that because I made that change. And then I'm going to copy this all the way across to here. And now, boom, it gives us everyone. And it works for the Giants as well because they all follow the same convention. So now we've got our whole lineup here. And now what we can do is highlight this, and we can use our click on the bottom here where it turns into this cross, and it will fill down. And now we've got the whole lineup here. And we've got our whole lineup without any codes. Okay, you can spread it out a little bit. You can read your lineup here and all that. So let's get some more space. Let's just, boom. All right, look, now you can see everybody. Perfect, okay? So now we wanna start pulling some data next door, okay? We got our stripped names. And by the way, above here, I like to highlight all the cells above this and merge in center. And I like to call this crunch, okay? And then we can bold everything, start making this look nice, right? Make everything look fancy. So we can call this crunch. We can do the same thing here, but instead of crunch, we'll call this stripped names. Okay, so we just have some kind of identifier for what it is. Now we're into column U. We're gonna basically do something for, again, every single position. So we can borrow these guys, these headings. Copy. This time I'm gonna paste by value because I don't want to take the orange formatting with me, because I am going to do this or as a yellow color. And the reason I'm doing this yellow is because in my mind, ownership is yellow. I don't know why, just that has been the color that I've always used. And so ownership is yellow, okay? So here we go, we get ownership now, and we're gonna start calculating ownership for each cell that corresponds to the cell over here. So this U column is gonna correspond to L and V to M, and we're gonna pull all the ownership this way, okay? So the way we're gonna do that is we're going to be saying if L is blank, then blank, right? Because why not? And there's a reason for that. Equals if L3 equals blank, then blank, otherwise. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna use a formula called an index match formula. It's the most useful and important formula when you're building any kind of data model for DFS. And it's simple, but it's complicated. So it just takes some getting used to. Once you get used to it, it's simple, all right? Basically, it starts out with an index. Index means, like the index of the array means, where are we going to look for what we want to put here? Where would we find it? What are we trying to put here? Ownership. Where would we get ownership for that player? Back here on NFL main, right? Because we pulled this data already. So let's click in here, and as you'll know, as you'll notice, it populates the sheet identifier here, and then we're going to look for ownership. Okay, and lo and behold, here it is. It's in column Z. We want to look in the array of Z. The array means all of column Z, or it means from row 3 to 5. It doesn't mean in cell Z3. It means some range of cells. I'm going to click the top here, which is just Z, so that it's a Z to Z. Look everywhere in Z. So now we're going to find whatever's here. How do we know which value to pick, which row to look? Well, let's match the player that we're trying to look for over here. So then we do the comma to see the next part. Now it's saying what row number? What row number? Well, if I want Tyreek Hill, I could just say row 5, and it would give it to me. But we don't know that manually. We need to have Excel tell us what row the person we're looking for is in. So let's say, instead of row number 5, let's do match, which is another function. Now we're nesting functions again, okay? But for the match function, you match in a parenthesis, and now it's asking you lookup value. That means, what do you want to look up in this column? What are we matching? And in this case, I did this to remind you, because we're back on this sheet now. It's L3. L3 is where the player name for the first crunch is. So we're going to match L3, and then another comma. And the lookup array is, again, just like this one. Where do you want to look for L3? Where do you want to find the name? Let's look in array A to A. And again, it will populate NFL main because we need to know to come back to this sheet, A to A. So now it's saying, let's look for whatever name is in L3 in this list. And when you find it, say it's DJ Moore, then come over here and read column Z for that value, which would be DJ Moore's ownership. Awesome. One more component to this formula, when you hit comma, match type. We're going to always use exact match. Excel does a horrible job of less than or greater than. It just comes up with weird values. Exact match is like 99.9% what you're going to use. Then you want to close your parenthesis. And as you'll notice, it highlights the parenthesis that you're closing. Ready, watch again. See, highlights it as you go. So you want to close that one, and then close your black one, and then your formula is done. Boom. So now it's telling me that Jalen Hurts' ownership was 9%. Okay. So now if we come over here and we find Jalen Hurts and we look over in his Z column, is his ownership 9? Yes, it is. So we're good to go. Okay. Now we got Hurts at 9. Now here's the tricky part. If I copy this formula, if I copy this cell, like, so there are two ways. I should probably stop and explain this to you. There are two ways to copy formulas to cells that you want to copy them to. One is to highlight the actual syntax up here and then hit Control C. Now, whenever you do this, you have to hit either escape or enter so that you don't screw up the formula that you have there now, okay? So I hit Control C and escape, come in here and paste the formula here. This is going to basically put the exact same formula here. So lo and behold, it's going to give you literally the exact same value. Even though we're putting it here, it's going to treat it as it's looking for L, not M, right? So that's one way. The other way is to just copy this cell like this and then move that and paste. That will allow all of these cell references to move over one, right? But the trick is you only want the L3 to move to M3 because we're only trying to look for the next player over. We don't want to look in column AA and in column B because that would screw everything up. Those are going to be constants. So here you click inside of this C to Z and hit F4. That locks this reference with an anchor. Click in here. That locks this. If I locked this, it would also do one of those things where like it kept everything the same and it would be 0.9. But we're going to leave this one unanchored so that it actually adjusts. So that when I copy this whole, and by the way, hit enter because this is our new formula here. Now when I copy this cell over, it's going to be a different number because it's literally keeping the Z and Z and A the same, but looking in M3 now instead. Okay. So we can do that across the whole span. Boom. We can do our double click to fill down. And now we've got everybody's ownership. Easy. Okay. Now, next, I'm going to grab this whole thing. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it next door. I'm going to change it to green because for some reason, projections in my head are green. Okay. We're going to change the title to projections. Everything else is going to stay the same. We're not going to copy any formulas. In this instance, I don't want to copy this cell over to here because it's going to shift like 8 or 9 cells over and it's going to start looking, instead of in L, it's going to start looking over here in U. Do you get it? So in this case, we do want to do this copy up here. Copy, enter or escape so you don't screw the formula up, and then paste it in here. And then you can hit enter and you'll notice, look, we get the same 0.9 because it's looking where? In the same place. ZZ, AA, it's looking for ownership, but we want projections. So now let's go back to our main page and see ZZ is ownership. Where were projections? AC, right? Yep. AC, projections. So now we go back to our sorter, and all we want to do is change where we look for the value. We don't want to change where we look for the name. We don't want to change the name we're looking for. We just want to update this Z to AC so that instead of pulling ownership, we're pulling projections. And now you can copy this straight across. And now we get everybody's projections. So just like that, you've got your crunch here, you've got your stripped crunch, you got your ownership and your projections, and we're rolling, okay? Now, before we get to our total section, we're going to do one more thing. And if you saw the first, not the first video in this series that I made, but the original tutorial that I did like a month ago or whatever, I didn't do the boom bust tool or anything. So this is all brand new. This is kind of a popular request kind of thing. People really wanted to see this in here, and I don't question it. I mean, I use the boom bust tool myself, so it makes sense. I just didn't show this last time. So let's put the boom bust in here. Now you'll notice we don't have boom bust data in our model yet, right? It's not part of what we have. So we need a source for the boom bust. So we're going to create a new tab. We're going to call that new tab copy boom bust. And because it's a place where we're going to copy a sheet, we're going to make it yellow, just like this, okay? And then guess what else we're going to do? We are going to do the trick. Highlight cell, more rules, no errors, format it yellow, dots, okay, boom, we paste here, okay? So now, let's go get the boom bust tool, which is right here. And I'm realizing now, I think this might be the boom bust tool for this week. And I'm doing last week's data here. So there may not be a match. So anyway, copy this, okay? Copy the boom bust tool. Come in here and paste it. And there's your boom bust tool pasted in, okay? These might not align because this might be a mismatch in data, but we'll see what happens. Okay. So now we have the boom bust tool. Now you have access to all of this data. You have two options at this point. I will not show you the more complicated option because I don't want to make this 2 hours. But you can then choose to create a dashboard page like NFL main, like boom bust main. And instead of pulling your data directly from this, you can pull it into the boom bust dashboard and manipulate it there. Like, in other words, if you're going to be doing anything to this data other than what Alex has already done, I would recommend making a dashboard page the exact same way we did NFL main off of this, and just treating that dashboard page as where you go to retrieve all of your boom bust data, but copying it in differently. And that way, if you, like, let's say you wanted to add another column here, like boom minus bust or something like that, don't do that here, because if you add your column here and then you do your calculations, next week when you copy and paste a new sheet, it's not going to be, okay? Do it in a dashboard sheet so that when you copy and paste, all this data gets pulled in and then the calculations get done the same way they normally would, okay? And also, while I have your attention with that, let me just tell you, there are two ways to use models like this. One, you can start with a entire clean model every week and do all your data, get all your data, and then save that model with like DraftKings week 7, October 23rd, and then save it into a folder. And then next week that you're doing it, open a brand new NFL main workbook and then start again. And that way you archive all your old stuff. But if you do just operate every week off the same sheet, you are going to be doing things like coming in here, deleting this, and repasting it in there. So two choices, however you want to do it. I tend to do it a little bit of both ways. I like to archive my stuff when I can, though, because you look back at it, you get some meaningful data. So anyway, all I'm going to be doing with this example to shorten it is to pull the boom percentage, okay? I can do that right out of here without making a dashboard page. Let's go ahead and we're going to do it just like this, but we're not going to be using NFL main anymore. So we're going to start with a clean formula. If, and again, L3 is where our first player is, right? If L3 is blank, then blank. If it's not blank, then let's index. What array do we want to look in? On the boom bust tool, I want to pull this data. What data do we want to pull out? The boom percentage. Boom, right here. Actually, you know what? Yeah, we'll just do boom percentage. Just say you can do optimal, however you want to do it, right? But so we'll pull in the boom percentage. Now, comma for the next row number. What row number? This is where we want to use our match function to find the row number. What are we looking up? The name that's in L3. Where are we looking to match it to? Well, these names right here. Okay. How are we going to match it? Exactly. Done. There you go. So now what this is telling you is that our buddy Jalen Hurts has a 12.5 boom percentage. Is that accurate? I have no idea where it is. So we'll see. Just really quickly gonna find Jalen Hurts. Yep, 12.5. Okay. There we go. So Hurts 12.5. Copy it across. Oh wait, no, you know what I didn't do? I didn't do my anchors. Damn it. Anchor your J's, anchor your A's, leave your L3s alone. And we're good. Okay. Copy it across. Double click, trick it down. Now you're going to get some of these. Okay. So this is our second running back in this lineup is Darrell Henderson. Darrell Henderson might be one of these name convention mismatch dudes, junior, right? So let's go back into the boom bust. And he's junior, right? We knew that. So Darrell Henderson Jr. So this is where it's a little tricky, okay? You're going to get some bad data here if you leave this out. I mean, the more of these names you omit, the worse your data gets. It's not by a ton, but in lineups like this where there's two of them, you know, you're really starting to hurt yourself. So the first step you can do is come back to our original formula, and we can say, look, it's okay to have a blank spot here, but you don't want an error, okay? You do not want errors in these things, because when you start to calculate, when you start ranking and adding and summing and product, you do not want errors, okay? It screws everything up. So the first step we could do is we could put that if error catch-all in here, right? If error, do all this garbage, and make sure you get this value. If error, if you get an error, just make it blank, okay? I don't want to deal with it. Just try it, and if you don't find a value, just give up. Omit it. So at least that gets the error out. Now, there are two other things you can do. You can create a situation where you come back in here and you just fix the names, right? You can just say, it is not Darrell Henderson Jr., damn it. It is Darrell Henderson. And now look, there he is, right? He's filled in, okay? You can do that. Or if you do choose to do a dashboard, you can do a table, okay? And I'll show you a table really quickly. I don't want to get too into this, but a name table would be something like this, okay? Where we have known mismatch names, right? So this is a site I pull data from. I know that Fantasy Cruncher uses Patrick Mahomes, and I know this particular site uses Patrick Mahomes II, okay? So what I do here is I have one central location where I put the Fantasy Cruncher name and then the FP name. These, you can type them in, right? I have kind of a really elaborate system of doing this where like I pull in the dashboard list and I can search it. But all you need to know is just keep a list of the names that are screwed up in between the two sources that you're looking at. And just make sure you write the Fantasy Cruncher name here, and then whatever the screwed up value is here. And then you've got your table. From this point on, you can do stuff like this. So here I have data that I pull from another site, okay? These names are Patrick Mahomes II. What this column that I've added here is, it says, look at the team table in this column. If you find Patrick Mahomes' name here, that means that he's one of those guys that has a value here that's different. Use this value instead of this one here. And so that's what it does. It searches for Patrick Mahomes II on this side of the table, and it finds it. And if it finds it in this side, that means that this is one of the guys that says a name, and it comes over here and it looks for Patrick Mahomes, and then it puts it here. And then from this point, anytime I query data from this data source, I do not look in column B. I only look in column A, so that my FC values are always the values that represent it, okay? So that's a long way of doing this. That's the better way of doing it. You'll never get errors once you complete your table. So you could do it however you want. But again, 3 ways. You can just omit it and take the data loss. It's not the most severe thing in the world. You can fix it manually by saying, oh, my wide receiver 3 here is screwed up. Who is it? It's Jamar Chase. And it's very likely it's because the apostrophe in his name is not there. So obviously when we find Jamar Chase here, he's going to have the apostrophe. So we can just edit like this. And that's the benefit of having, and it's fixed. So that's the benefit, though, of having a table. I'm sorry, a dashboard sheet where you're pulling this stuff from, because you can do what I showed you before. You could have like your far left column, your A column, be like your fixed names, right? And then you'll never have to deal with this. So anyway, we get the boom tool pulled in here now. And so we're good with that. The very next thing that we need to do is to start figuring out how we're going to total and how we're going to decide to sort, right? So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to make a little totals section. And we're going to total ownership, projection, and boom. And it's taking this formatting. So I'm just going to come in a conditional format. Actually, it's not conditional formatting. It's just taking the color because it's on. So boom. All right, there we go. So we're going to do this, and I'm going to merge and center this and just call this the total section. Okay. So let's start with projection. Okay. We just want to total the projection for the whole lineup. Everybody, AD through AL. So this is just going to simply be equals AD, sum of AD3 to AL3. And as you can see, it's everybody, right? Now, when we do this, we just want to make sure that we use some kind of if L3 equals blank, blank. I mean, realistically, this L3 could be any column here, because when the lineups run out, none of this stuff is going to populate anymore. But I just, as convention, I stick with the first name in the list. It's L3. So now we get the lineup total for projections. I'm going to come back to ownership now. So this is a personal preference. Some people will do what I just did, right? So it's U to AC. Some people will say equals if L3 equals blank, then blank. If not, I already forgot what it was. U to AC. If not, sum U3 through AC3. Okay. Some people will do it this way, and there's your ownership sum. Okay. If you do it this way, recommend times 100. Just gives you a nicer number that kind of looks like that constant gives you a number that looks a lot like projection does, right? Because we're adding back in the percentages. So that's sum of ownership. Some people like to do the product instead. And that'll give you this weird ass number here. Okay. One trap to note in this instance is if you get a person in here that's got 0 ownership, it's going to make your whole damn lineup 0, because literally anything multiplied by 0 is 0. So if you choose to do it this way, I would do one of two things. I would either choose to make it so that if this value is going to be 0, it's blank. See, that fixed it. So here you would say like if, and then this whole value is 0, then blank, right? That would help. Or the other thing you can do is you can do this really convoluted thing of saying, if, the hell was it again? If U3 equals 0, then 1, and then times if, and then do that for each one so that if it's 0, it just multiplies it by a 1 instead. And then you do it if V, if W, if X, if, and you do the whole thing. So choose your way, however you want to do it. But I would build in some kind of error trapping there in case somebody has a 0 projection. Sometimes you will get, especially if you're using like fewer decimal places, if you're rounding this up to a whole percentage, sometimes you'll see that like people that have like 0.9 might become 0 instead. Okay. The other thing you can do instead of product is you can do you can do something called geomean. Okay, if you're not familiar with that, that basically takes a group of numbers and multiplies them together like product, but then it takes that answer to the root of however many numbers there were. So if you're multiplying 8 numbers times themselves, it would then take that result to the 8th root. And that gives you a constant number that's exactly the same thing as the product of the ownerships, but a much cleaner version of it. So if we did U2, I think it's AC, right? So U3 to AC3. See, just gives you a nicer looking number than that weird product number did. And you can use this. I think some people find this to be a little bit more accurate in some regard too, because it kind of treats things, I think, a little bit more evenly in certain instances. I'm not that familiar with why, to be honest. Personally, I use some most of the time. I know that might be taboo to some people. I like some better. I like not having to worry about 0 ownerships. And I've done a bunch of experiments where I have taken ownership product and ownership sum side by side and sorted by them. And I got significantly better results with some, but that's just me. So however you want to do it, the important thing is that you get a value. Okay, that's the important thing. And then the boom, we'll take the product of it. And by the way, if you're watching this and you're saying to yourself, well, if you're looking for probability, then multiplication is the way to go. I don't disagree with that. I totally understand that that's accurate. But there are limitations to that as well, which, we won't really get into here. But I mean, that is true. But in this case, we're using this more of a benchmark than we are of true probability. So using some is certainly fine as well. I copied that formula, put it in here, and instead of U, I don't know why Excel always puts this damn thing in the way. We're gonna go AM3 to AU3 and just take this section, and we'll sum the boom or product it, whatever, however you want to do it. Okay, so sum the. I did not mean to leave this in there. Okay, so now we've got 3 numbers that are very similar in feel, right? And we've got some values. We can take these and boom. Now, here I left this to last to show you this in particular. If you tried to sort this, like say you wanted to find your lineup with the largest ownership, it wouldn't let you. It would tell you that you can only sort it by A to Z, because sorting only works when all values are actual values, not blanks. If you want to do that, one thing you can do is you can say, instead of if this is blank, in other words, if we run out of lineups, blank, make it 0. Okay, so this is a viable option as well. And then you can copy that down. And now it's going to give you zeros basically as well. Okay, so now if we wanted to sort this, it could see it gives us smallest, largest. If we go back to hello, All right, if we go back to this, it gives us A to Z, okay? So doing it with the 0 there allows us, did I just screw it up? I did. Allows us to be able to sort there. And also it can help with some calculations on the road. In fact, there are instances where you may even want to use a number here deliberately that would put lineups that are blank at the way bottom, like -10 or -1,000 or some kind of constant there too. But anyway, let's move on before we run out of time. We got our total section, okay? So we can make our total section some other color, whatever we want, doesn't matter. Now that we have our total section, we need to rank these, okay? So here, we're going to do if L3 equals blank, then blank. Otherwise, let's rank our ownership values, okay? So we're gonna say rank. What number do we want to? AV3, we're gonna rank this first because we're gonna copy this formula down and in every row, it's gonna rank that particular value. What do we wanna rank it against? We wanna rank it against pretty much all the values in our crunches or potential. So AV3 to AV 2003, okay? We do want to make sure we anchor these numbers because otherwise, when we go down to here, it's gonna be like AV 10 or 11 down, and it's not gonna rank the ones above it, okay? So you wanna anchor this whole range. And now this question is very important to pay attention to. Do you want it in ascending or descending order, okay? I'm gonna show you what happens with both. And then this is a concept you're gonna really have to try to get your head on, okay? Let's rank it first in ascending, okay? Now, just so we get an idea, it tells us that's number 38. Lineup number 38 doesn't help us, okay? Compared to what? Let's give a few values here. Okay, so this is 38 and this is 37. So let's ask ourselves, which one is lower ownership? This one. This is saying that our lower ownership lineup is ranked as a higher number. Is that what we want? Well, we have to figure that out, okay? It's not always we're number one. You don't always want your best number one. It depends on what you're trying to do with these ranked values. What is better in DFS, lower ownership or higher ownership? Obviously, it's lower ownership. So you would think, okay, maybe we want this to be our number one lineup, right? We want this to be a lower number because it's number one, the best. Well, ultimately, what we're going to be doing with these ranks is adding them together to get a score. So we want the better lineup to have the higher score. So if we want lower ownership to be better, we want that to add a higher number to our score. So we want lower ownership to have a higher number here. This higher ownership has a lower number. So this is actually properly ranked with the 0, okay? Very confusing. It takes a while to get used to this, but that is what we want. We want it to have a higher number. Ranking is not about always number one is best, number two is not. It's sometimes just about getting like a mathematical component, right? And that's what it is here. So now that's our rank of ownership. We want to rank our projection, okay? Do we want to rank our projection the same way? Let's see. Put this here. And instead of ranking a V, let's rank a W. And we want to make sure we change the range to AW to AW 2003. Okay? So this tells you that this is our second ranked, our third, and our 41st. Okay? Again, we're trying to score these together. Highest score is better. Is 41 adding the most on this lineup, which is projected way lower than these? No. So we want to rank this in ascending order. Okay? We want to rank this in ascending order so that this being higher than this gives a higher number, and this is higher here. Does that make sense? It does, right? But here's the interesting thing. Notice that when we rank this on out of order, it starts giving us 199, but we don't even have 1,999 lineups. Why? because it's starting to treat all of these as a lower number, because we're ranking it so that the lower numbers go in the bottom here, right? Oof. All right. So how do we fix that? So there's a couple of ways we can fix it. But the first is, instead of making these zeros, we can change them to something else, right? So this, again, is going to be like a little bit of personal preference. The other thing that you can do is you can put an if statement in here that says, if the ownership is above a certain number, rank it then, and don't rank it if it's not. So we could do like, so we could go in here and we could say, let's see, we could say, this is for projection, right? So we could say, if AW3 is greater than 10, then rank it. And if not, blank it. That doesn't change it, right? All right, so I forget exactly why that's happening now. All right, for some reason I thought that would actually work. If this is greater, so this is saying, oh, you know what I think we would have to do? I think we would have to do it because it's always going to be within that range, right? So trying to think of how I did this last time. Well, let me try this. If I go back to blank, that does it. Okay. So in this instance where you're ranking in ascending order, you probably do want to put the blank in here. That will help it to not be considered part of the ranking system here. There is another way, I kind of forget how to do it, where you do an if then clause. It's just something I can't really put my head around at this very moment while I'm doing this video. I can work that out for you if you want to be able to put the 0 in there, because now obviously you're not going to be able to sort this way. But you know, the other thing too, if you really wanted to be able to sort your lineups by projection only, and you just wanted to see it, you can always just throw another column in here and just do the same exact formula, but do add the 0, and then you could sort that one and just don't add that one into your total, you know. So that's an easy way around it too. But anyway, the important thing is these are ranked accurately. Okay, we can say this is my number 1, my number 2, my number 3. All right. So now we want to do the same thing here with boom. We want to rank boom the same way as projection, right? Because the higher the better. So quite simply, and we're going to have to change the boom to a blank again. But so we're going to have to go AX, AX, AX. So that ranks that, and we're going to get, of course, 2000 because we have not changed this to this. Okay. Now it's only 100. And there we go. Okay. So we got our biggest booming lineups, our highest projected lineups, and our lowest ownership lineups. Lowest with the highest number. Like this is probably one of the lowest lineups. This is probably the lowest lineup or close to it in here. What do we do? 100? So 100 is the lowest projected lineup here in terms of ownership. Okay. And it's ownership of 46. Okay. So that's what you do. So now we have our totals and we have our ranks. So now there's a couple of different ways to do this part. Okay. You can rank the ranks. You can add these all up and then rank the total. You can simply just do this, right? Which is lineup score, right? You can say equals AY3 plus AZ3 plus BA3. Done. Okay, there you go. Lineup score. Okay, 237. So this lineup is better than this lineup. This lineup is better than this one. This one is better than these two, right? And it's down here. So we'd want to sort this one higher, right? Okay, but the problem is, I'm going to erase this because this treats everybody here the same. Okay, this is just as important as this, and it's just as important as this. In the real world, I don't think that's actually true. So let's come back to our formula here, and let's add some parentheses around all of these guys so that we can manipulate each one. Instead of that, I'm going to say, let's take AY3 and multiply it by AY1 times AY1. Important note, anchor it, because you want to take this times AY1, this times AY1, and you don't want it to keep shifting down. Plus AZ3 times AZ1 anchored, plus BA3 times BA1 anchored. Boom. And that's going to give us 0 for everyone, because there's nothing up there. Okay? But once you start filling this in, unmerge it, once you start filling this in with weights, this will start taking shape. So let's say that out of 100%, we think ownership is 40% of the game. We think projection is also 40%, and boom is 20%. Boom. There we go. No pun intended. We've got new lineup scores here based on these weights. Okay? So we're saying that this lineup has this score when this is as important as this, and this is half as important as these two. What if we think ownership is way more important than anything? Now see how this drastically changes, right? So that's your weighting system. Okay? Now, what you can do is, when you've got this whole thing set this way, and you've got your score, that's an ugly color, huh? I'll give this something else. I don't know. Actually, so to be honest with you, in my convention, I always make my sorting table stuff gray. I don't know why. I just love it. All right, there we go. So let's go ahead and figure out how do we go about actually sorting it. Well, you want to take this and you want to go all the way to the beginning, across everything. Make sure there's no breaks in it, all the way. Control-Shift-L, that adds a filter to that header. Okay? So now you get your filter. Filter basically just gives you some options, right? Sort smallest to largest, sort by color. You can go in here and look. So what's cool is, like, let's say this is your MVP column in a showdown. You could just come in here and be like, oh, do I have any Tom Brady? You know, and you could search that way. So this is cool there. But the main use this is going to have is you're going to come in here and sort largest to smallest under your score. And you're going to get all kinds of errors. Okay? So why do I have errors? We have errors because we obviously didn't error trap something. All right, let me see. What did I do wrong? What did I forgot, first of all, I forgot to say if L3 equals blank, then blank. Got wrapped up there. Got a little screwed up. Is that what it was? Okay. And it's actually not blank. In this case, we need this to be 0 so that we have large to small. That's what it is. All right. So now you've got your highest scoring lineup is a 92. And again, 92 is just relative, right? It's just 92 because it's bigger than this. If you start changing these weights, these numbers all change. But that basically tells you that the best lineup according to your weighting system here is this guy. 84.3 ownership, 143 projection, 126 boom. So really strong boom, really strong projection, pretty low ownership, okay? And that's your system. And now here's the thing about this that's so cool. When you sort this, the crunch that you pasted in here, it sorts also. So this lineup is the actual lineup from your crunch. It sorts. So when you're done, this is your best lineup. This is your second, your third, your fourth, your fifth. You could literally just come in here and take these down to, you'll see the numbers there. I mean, I only did 100. So let's say we were entering like 40 lineups, 220 maxes. You could take the top 40 lineups, copy it right from here, and then download your DraftKings CSV and paste it right in there. I don't know if I have one of those I can show you really quick. Yeah, so here's a baseball one. I don't know where this came from. So let's just say this is the CSV you downloaded from DraftKings. You could take, what do we call this? Main workbook. You could take your, 30 best lineups, copy them, bring them over here, and say you're going to enter them right here. Boom, put them in here and put them in that contest. And those are your 30 top lineups. And you could just save this and upload this right to DraftKings. Okay. Now that's basically it. That's all you really need to know. Another thing you can add here super quick is you can add a little table here, right? Where you say ownership, projection. Oh, by the way, anything that's spaced away from this filter things won't sort. So if you want to add another table that you don't want to sort, leave a space, add it, don't have the filter part, and then it won't sort. So let's just say ownership, projection, and boom. And we could do min, max, and average. You just make yourself a little table. And you could say equals, and then in your totals column, you could say the max of AV to AV. The maximum value in this column, I did min, right? This is supposed to be min. Son of a bitch. All right, min. So you could do min. The min is 0. So you probably want to do, I forgot I added that 0. Let's just, for now, let's just go ahead and get rid of this. There's ways around all this stuff, but it's just going to make my video 3 hours long, and I don't want to do that. So, right. So the minimum ownership in your lineups is 46.8. Copy this in here and copy this in here. And now I will say the max of AV to AV ownership and the average. And then you can just do it like this. So this is the minimum of this is W. Yeah, minimum of W, the minimum of X, and then you can do max of W. You can do average of AW. You can do average of AX. You can do max of A. What the hell is this W? And then, oh no, this is AX, right? Boom is AX. Let's screw it up here. Sorry. Yeah, AX, AX, AW, AW. Right. So you can use this little chart here as just kind of a reference point to say with these weights, my best lineup has an ownership of 84.3. where does that rank in terms of the best ownership on the board, or the lowest ownership on the board, I should say? 46 is the lowest, 120 is the max, 98 is average. So it's a little bit below average ownership. It's well above the minimum, but it's also well below the max. So I think that's a strong value, right? Our projection is 143. The max projection on here is 149. So we're within 7 points of the max. This is not the optimal max. This is our max, but we're within 7 points of it with our sorting. Again, probably pretty strong, right? But and we're above average. Same thing with boom, right? The max boom is 144. We're well above average boom, way above minimum boom, and pretty close to the maximum. So good lineup, right? So this is probably a good weight. But let's say we did something crazy like this: 0.2, 0.6. This changes things dramatically when we sort. See, notice how this didn't change, right? So now it's saying, is this back to actually? It's got our same. We have our same. Is that our same lineup? Was that our same lineup? No, it's just really similar, yes. 84. Let's see. Trying to make sure I didn't make a mistake. This stuff is honestly very easy to make a mistake in. It really is. You'd be surprised. Even like I've done this a bunch of times. Yeah, that's, for some reason that's giving us a different score. The same lineup. What the heck? Wonder why that's happening. Let me see. Let's do this extreme. That's different. Maybe it was just a coincidence. All right. So here, though, you can see like weighting at 90% ownership, 10% projection. It gives you an ownership of 79. So, that's, again, it's not even that far down. It's actually pretty good. And the projection goes down. The boom score goes down. If we were to flip these, and that brings back this 84, 143, 126. So, you could see the difference between the two. Ownership comes up just a touch, right? Yeah, just a touch, but the projection goes way down. So you just have to kind of play around with these weights to see if you think that what you're doing is working for what you want your results to be. You really just have to kind of, play around with it. This is also going to change dramatically if we put 500 lineups in here, but within 100 lineups, it's not going to change very dramatically. So anyway, there you go. The last thing I will show you is this formula is for DraftKings. To get the formula for FanDuel, let me show you what that looks like. Okay, let me change mine to FanDuel. All right. This is the formula here for DraftKings we see. For FanDuel, it's going to be this guy. All right. And so I'll copy that. And I'll just bring that over here for you to look at for a minute. So it's just going to be, why didn't that copy it? You can't be serious. Let me see. Oh, it's just Excel giving me a hard time. Awesome. All right. It's weird that Excel's giving me a hard time. All right. So it's that. So it's basically, if B4 was the cell you're looking in, it's just the right of B4. And then the number of characters is going to be the whole length of B4 minus whatever the character is the number of characters that finding that colon is in B4 starting at number 1. So it's just the length of the whole thing minus that. Okay, just because again, FanDuel has a little different format. So instead of this formula here, you would swap that FanDuel for there if you were doing FanDuel. And the other thing is, just you gotta note, everything else is the same FanDuel DraftKings except for on sports where they have fewer players in general, like, oh, there's 9 on FanDuel and 8 on DraftKings or whatever, you're gonna have to accommodate for that too. You know, if you just take your like DraftKings model and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players here, and then there are 10 on Yahoo or something, you're gonna be cutting a person off. So you want to make sure you just always account for that. Other than that, that's it. All right, guys, take care.